So this is a bit of a first for the channel. This is set 76020, Knowhere Escape Mission, from the Guardians of the Galaxy sub-theme of LEGO Marvel from the year 2014. So this set is 10 years old this year, and that's just mind-blowing when you think about it, man. So I thought to celebrate 10 years of this set existing and the fact that, you know, it's been 10 years since I've owned it, I thought might as well have a look back at it, because it's somehow survived 10 years in my possession. I think that's a bit of a feat on its own. So let's just get into this set then.
Ain't no thing like me except me.
So I thought I would start off with the more villain-centric side of this set just to start with. And so this is the planet of Knowhere, and that is a location the Guardians visit at one point to have some info dump about the little orb thing that the purple stone is in. And so on Knowhere there is a sort of mining sort of colony thing that's going on, and they have these structures sort of in the area.
Blah, blah, blah. We're all very fascinated.
They did include the piss pool, and I think that is probably their canon name considering it's James Gunn. But it's a fairly accurate representation of what's there. Though in the scene everything is darkly lit, so it was kind of tricky trying to figure out what was there. But like I said, they got the piss ponds there, so that's pretty accurate. You can recreate the scene where Drax gets chucked into one and then Groot has to stab him to, you know, bring him back to life. Man, that scene, Christ. Anyway, but LEGO here has brightened up the colours quite a bit, and it's pretty neat for what it was. I vaguely remember building this in the living room, and I don't know. I think at the time I'd not seen the film, so to me this set was kind of confusing. Though it is pretty neat, at least for what it is. It's neat for what it is, at least especially back then. This was sort of at the time where LEGO Marvel was still in its sort of infancy, I would say. This was almost 2 years after the theme just about started. So this was just as they were dipping their toes into doing movie-based stuff, because up to that point there was the sets based off the original Avengers and then the Spider-Man cartoon that was going on at the time. And just as the MCU was sort of picking up steam with... When was this? This was after the, I think, second Captain America, wasn't it? Was it the first one? I never really seen them, so I can't really remember. But this was just after the sort of the first few Marvel movies. I remember it was after Iron Man 3, I think. Oh god, Iron Man 3 sets. Ugh. Anyway, back to this set, sorry. MCU tangent aside. But this set does capture the scene relatively well. And it's fine enough. Interestingly, there are some play features on this structure. There's a trapdoor here where you can pull it out and someone can fall into the piss yellow below. Then over here there's a little catapult to throw the little cylinders. Thank God no one's going to be throwing them. And then over here there's this little slammer that I presume Groot can step on, or as a big fig you would probably slam down it, and it can make the tower sort of fall over. Though when it does, some of the bits sort of come up with it. These like little plate pieces come up with it quite a little bit. While I was testing it for the review they kept coming off. I think it's just due to the clutch power on them. The set can also be somewhat rearranged. There are axle holes along some of the parts, so you can rearrange it any way you want. Or if you're really insane back then, you had two of them, you could probably connect them together. Another build in this little part is this little turret, and I do actually quite like this build. It's simplistic, but it's kind of neat. It's got some interesting parts to it and some stickers, and thank God little me put the stickers on fairly well. Just to note, I had to clean this up just a little bit because it has been rotting in a box for quite a while. So if you do see any kind of disgusting stickers, I'm kind of sorry for that. But back to the build, it's pretty cool. It can sit up on top of the structure here and just be placed anywhere. There's a set of handlebars on the side so a minifigure can hold it, and it's pretty neat. I do like it. I do like the stickers especially as well, and seen on some of the other Sakaran-based vehicles and items, these stickers are on them. And it's kind of cool, so this almost graffiti-like look. I take it that it probably is accurate enough to the film. So next up we have this little mining vehicle, and it's accurate enough to the film. I'm sort of surprised back then. You would have considered they would have given a weirder sort of vehicle in this set, but this is in the film, and it's accurate enough as well. The only thing I would say is maybe the colours, like LEGO has brightened it up a little bit more. Well, did brighten up. I should be referring to this thing in the past tense, but you get what I mean. So LEGO brightened up the vehicle a little bit, but it still kind of works. In the film it's a much duller blue and there isn't as much yellow, though this is still pretty good build from what it is. The cockpit can open on the front and reveals a small set of controls that are stickered, and it's tall enough that a minifigure can sit in it. On the back there's this sort of opening compartment, and some of the yellow cylinders can go in. I think this presumably is probably fuel from the looks of it. I don't know, in the film they don't really mention it. There are some interesting snot building techniques on this as well, especially on the sides and stuff. On the front there are these two sort of grabby hands, and as I said earlier, yes, they're accurate to the film. And they're a decent representation as well. The clear rods are a welcomed addition, especially for the time. But yeah, it's another solid little vehicle. Interestingly though, it would have been kind of funny if maybe they included something else in this set. Maybe another structure, or even just another Sakaran member. Because it seems awkward enough that Rocket is doing this all on his own while Groot's there. And speaking of that, so we move on to Groot, who I'm counting as a build for the sake of simplicity, because if I include him as a character, it'd be kind of awkward to try and get a turnaround of him, though I will try. But Groot here is pretty cool. For the time, he's a really interesting semi-big fig. Though since it's been 10 years since this figure's release, I do hope we do get a minifigure Groot that scales well. With the return of the Woody legs recently, I'm kind of hoping LEGO does amend this by making a tall Groot figure. But at the same time, minifigure Groot is fine, I can live with it. But for a while we had this guy, who is pretty fine. He uses a lot of the mixel joints. Those are just new at the time, like really new. And it's a pretty good representation of the character. A special attention to detail went towards stuff like the fingers and the legs. There's a lot of interesting printed pieces as well. These two specialised slope pieces that were printed especially just for him. Like, these things are kind of rare. And not to mention his main body piece, that is a really interesting mould. It reminds me a little bit of some of the Nexonites, larger characters. In Nexonites they had these sort of larger, almost big fig-like characters that used these sort of shoulder and front pieces and then had a small attachment for a minifigure head to go on. And I'd say Groot is the sort of, I guess you could say, predecessor to that. But then you could argue some of the older big figs were somewhat a predecessor to that. The family show on this is a little bit weird. Anyway, on Groot there are some studs on him, so you can place Rocket or even foliage on him. Though I'm kind of surprised they didn't include a clip on the back for Rocket to hang on to. Just seems like a sort of missed opportunity, though you can easily just put one on there yourself. A special detail went towards the face, and as much as it's not Lego-like, it kind of has that Lego spirit to it. I think it's because Groot already has those kind of eyes. Also, special mention, on the top of his head he has a little hole for a pole to go into. I don't know why they thought about that especially, but I guess. Lego in 2014 was kind of weird. It's kind of weird looking back on this set. Lego was a little bit ballsy back then as well, I admit. Like, in this set alone there are quite a lot of interestingly moulded parts. They only probably got used once or twice. Heck, especially in the Guardians of the Galaxy sub-theme, there were a lot of parts that only were in those sets. They did eventually bleed out into the other Marvel lines, but for the time there was a lot of unique pieces. Today you probably would only maybe get 1 or 2 new moulds per a set of themes, especially from Marvel. So for the time this was a little bit mind-blowing. So let's get on to the proper figures of this set.
I am...
Well, that's just as fascinating as the first 89 times you told me that.
Yeah, I'm going to say Rocket till last, but first let's look at the Sakaran member, who is, I would say, kind of the unsung hero of this set a little bit. This figure is kind of cool. I'm kind of sad that I slept on it for quite a bit as well. This figure does have some interesting prints to it. The face is dual-sided and it's kind of creepy. There's something kind of unsettling about it. The torso as well has that similar paint design that's seen on the gun. I wouldn't say it's maybe blood, but you know, I think Lego wouldn't imply what it is. There isn't any arm printing or leg printing, and while today I think a lot of people would complain about that, but to be fair, this was 2014. This was just after stuff like Chima and Ninjago were sort of, I guess you could say, beginning to have that. Chima especially. But here it's pretty cool. Also special mention to this unique gun mould that I've not seen in any other set since. This was primarily just in the Guardians of the Galaxy sub-theme, so this existed just within that theme. It might have appeared in another Marvel set, but far as I know it's not appeared in any other. It's pretty interesting. It's got 2 studs on each side. Well, it's got 1 stud on each side, so there's 2 studs altogether. So you can put a stud on it. Here it's just trans blue studs. But it's a pretty unique little figure, and I'm kind of sad I slept on him for quite a while. Luckily he is in a couple other sets, so there's 2 other sets in this theme, so you get 3 across all of them. So that's pretty neat. So next up we have Nebula, and she's the second villain of this set, and was sort of a second antagonist in the film. To be fair, she gets dispatched by a rocket by Drax, like at the end.
Stupid.
Traitor.
And that's the only thing I can't remember about her in the first movie. In the other movies she was a bit better, but at the same time, here she is. And she was an exclusive figure for a time as well. There's nothing too special to say about her, besides her having a silver moulded arm, a regular dual blue arm, and a fairly normal torso print, and no leg printing. Her face is pretty cool though. It's an accurate enough representation of what was in the film, and it's cool enough. She has 2 katanas too. To be honest, I don't really have much to say about her. She's an alright figure, and to be honest, she's kind of pricey at the moment. It's nice enough that LEGO has included in other sets going forward since she became a more prominent character within the franchise, and that's neat enough. Though I'm hoping we do eventually get a sort of redo of this set. Heck, I think that would be kind of interesting. A redo of this set would be cool. Some new pieces, some new molds, maybe a Groot figure even. Yeah, I'm kind of just biding for time a little bit. Let's move on to the next figure. And that next figure is, well, Rocket Raccoon. And he's a pretty cool figure. I think a lot of people just brought this set for Rocket and Groot alone. But at the same time, man, it was kind of worth it, to be honest. So here he is, and man, looking back on this figure is kind of weird. Especially since recently, LEGO has finally sort of established a new Rocket head mould. And I think it's the better of the two. This one was always kind of weird to me. I always find it weird that they had the shoulder pads sort of moulded into him, so you couldn't really turn around or anything. Back to the head though. Well, to the colour of the head, I should say. And that is, for some reason he's grey. This goes along with the other colour things in this set, but I didn't mention this with Groot, but both of them are somewhat not accurately coloured. I can chalk this up to maybe LEGO getting some concept art instead of actual renders from the film, and LEGO just sort of working off of it. Though at the same time though, Rocket was grey for quite a bit. Like, up until Endgame he was grey. It was only until they began to make actual sets based off Guardians that they made him brown. Not the older sets, I mean the newer ones they did, like the Benatar and stuff. Anyway, so Rocket was sort of grey for a while, and Groot was a much darker brown. It was only till recently they've started making them in their more, I guess you could say, accurate colours. But I think that was a bigger problem at the time, because judging from some pictures I looked up, Rocket was a lot of different colours throughout a lot of different toys, so sometimes he was brown and sometimes he was grey. So I think this probably was just a bigger issue that affected all kinds of merchandise for the film. Anyway, back to Rocket. He's a pretty solid figure. I can't really complain about him because it's just a good enough representation of the character. His head has some really intricate printing on it as well, especially around the ears. He includes his gun, that is pretty accurate to the film, though the barrel and the sort of scope are a little bit more squared. With LEGO having their part limitations, this is fairly enough what it is. They've included the stock on the back as well, and even a carrying handle that is pretty accurate to the film. I gave him the little orb because I couldn't really think of anyone else to carry it, so he's just sort of holding it. And yeah, he's just another little solid figure, and I can see why he's a bit sought after now. It was only till recently LEGO has done a sort of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 inspired Rocket figure in that mech set, though they gave him some goggles for some reason. At the same time though, I don't know, it's accurate enough, and to be honest, he is a sought after figure. That's an interesting thing about this set, a lot of the things in it are quite sought after. It's kind of weird now, LEGO probably would have not done a set where they just released one focal character in it, though I think they probably would have still. I mean, this is LEGO Marvel after all. Kind of weird looking back on this set, to be honest. It shows the sort of strengths and weaknesses of LEGO Marvel itself, I would say. An interesting build, some interesting figures, but then on the other hand, exclusive figures only in one set and a slightly dull build. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I think if this set was released now, I think some people would be kind of vocal about it. At the same time though, this was in 2014. This was when LEGO was sort of getting used to doing licensed themes, or at least ones besides Star Wars and the occasional random movie. At the same time though, this set just reminds me of a slightly simpler time when just getting a cool figure or two, or even just a build, was kind of enough for me. Heck, I think that would be enough for some people. It's just sort of weird looking back. And I guess that's the review. If you want to stick around, I guess you could subscribe. Take a look at the rest of the channel while you're here as well. And I guess I'll see all of you next time. Bye.